doesn't fight crime or wear a cape. He doesn't read minds or levitate. But every time my world needs saving, he's my Superman. Some folks don't believe in heroes 'cause they haven't met my dad. He loves his workshop and rock and roll. He's got a hot rod and a heart of gold. And you could say he's a man of few words, but he talks a lot within. And even though I'm a little taller, I still look up to him. He built me a house in the arms of a tree. He taught me to drive and to fight and to dream. When he looks in my eyes, I hope he can see that my dad's a hero to me. Rust-ridden fenders and doors full of dings. Somehow he can fix about anything. I didn't think he knew how to cry till our dog died that year. He doesn't always say I love you, but I can hear him loud and clear. He built me a house in the arms of a tree. He taught me to drive and to fight and to dream. When he looks in my eyes, I hope he can see that my dad's a hero to me. Taught me to drive and to fight and to dream. When he looks in my eyes, I hope he can see that my dad's a hero to me. My dad's a hero to me. Dad's a hero to me.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me down the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Welcome, everyone. I am so very, very honored to be presiding over this ceremony today, and truly to pay tribute to a man who was an American patriot, a husband, a father, and a dear, dear friend to each and every one of us in this room. Jim Karalus. As we reflect on the life, the legacy, and the love that Jim bestowed onto all of us, one feels emboldened to do it through the lens of a great Teddy Roosevelt quote, which embodies Jim, but also I know Jim would have really, really loved. And the quote goes like this: "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of good deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly and who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, who at best knows at the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails daring greatly." Jim embodied Roosevelt's sentiment of standing up in the arena. He stood up in the arena of family life. He stood up in the arena of friendship. And he stood up in the arena of career ascension. And he did all of that while daring greatly. Jim dared greatly with his wife, Sharon, and his kids, whether it was a successful, sustaining 53-year marriage, or learning the sport of basketball with no prior knowledge and no prior acumen in order to teach his son's basketball team. Or whether it was Jim on transit to his son's scouting retreat, and the car immediately erupts in flames. And what does Jim do? He doesn't stop. He doesn't call for help. He doesn't retreat. He gets out of that car. He puts the flames out. He gets back in, and he continues on his journey towards that retreat. Jim dared greatly with his friends. Each and every one of us in this room, and watching as well, will say that Jim was kind, Jim was loving, Jim was generous. Which is interesting because Jim was such a frugal individual. I mean, he shopped at Goodwill for his clothing. But when the phone rang, he answered the call, and he answered the call for any request that came to him. May not have said yes immediately, but always gave all that he can give to his friends and his family. Jim dared greatly with his career, whether it was traveling the world abound or whether it was enhancing and advancing professional colleagues of his. He dared greatly there. You know, there is an old spiritual song, 18th century, that has the lines that say, "When it looks like the sun wasn't going to shine anymore, God put a rainbow in the clouds." So many of us in this room today can reflect on an experience where Jim was that rainbow in our transient clouds. And today, as we all gather here to pay tribute to this great man, I invite you all, as you listen to the stories of Jim's wife and kids, to go through your own personal reflection on your experiences with Jim as an opportunity to pay tribute to him. So with that being said, I will begin inviting up Calvin, who's going to read a poem for us, and you will hear more and more from Jim's family throughout the rest of the proceedings.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. All right. You can shed tears that he is gone, or you can smile because he lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he will come back, or you can open your eyes and see that he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live for yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him and only that he is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry, close your mind, be empty, and turn your back. Or you can do what he would have wanted, smile, open your eyes, love, and move on. Thank you.
All right. So those of you who do not know me, I'm Dan Karalus. I pronounce my name differently than my dad, I guess. Everyone else says Karalus. And, you know, the death of my dad was obviously a shock, and so it was a time for me to do a little reflection, and all the memories that came back to me were not, you know, fully formed. I just remember glimpses of different things. And the mention by Napoleon when he just spoke, he had a Teddy Roosevelt quote, and I think it's very appropriate because when I went through my memories of my dad, he would probably argue against this, but I'm pretty sure he was an environmentalist. maybe just a conservationist in the Teddy Roosevelt style, or like gift. But I'm pretty sure he was, because my dad, I remember my dad running to work. Maybe he wasn't running to work to save gas in the planet, but he ran to work. If he wasn't running to work, he drove the most fuel-efficient car possible, a Ford Festiva, bragging that it got like 45 miles to the gallon. And when he drove that, he would boast that he could drive all the way back from work without using the brakes. It was for the younger people, that's called a manual transmission. And so, you know, he's obviously saving wear and tear on the car. He did other conservationist things. He saved his clothes. He patched his clothes. After the kids got older and moved out, he converted part of the furnace to be, or part of the fireplace to heat the rest of the house, so he could go in the backwoods, chop his own wood, bring it in and burn that. We can have conversations whether that's good or bad for the environment, but he was definitely conserving resources, right? So that's, you know, those are the types of memories that came back of my dad. But I also think my dad was definitely a trendsetter. He had the members only jacket before everyone else did. And he probably still has it in the closet. He had the 1980s winter coat with the bright neon colors that all the young kids, like my kids, want to wear these days. He had that probably even before it came out in the 80s. He had the lumberjack beard and the cut-off sleeves before lumberjacks were trendy. So, I mean, that's Jim, and I think he did all these things and he didn't know it. And then, you know, my dad is also very much a company man. I don't mean that in the sense that he was just spouting the company line of NRG Energy or Northwestern Power where he worked, but he was a company man. What I remember about my dad is he went to work every day. For the most part, my mom was the one that trucked me around to soccer or whatever other sports I was doing. My dad went to work. My dad also traveled a lot for work, and my friends and I thought he was a spy. This may or may not have something to do with the movie True Lies coming out in the 90s, where Arnold Schwarzenegger was somehow a dorky businessman who was not supposed to look like a spy, even though he totally was a spy. But my friends did think that Jim was a spy. Maybe he is. We'll never know. Maybe we will uncover something in the garage. But I also say my dad's a company man because my dad loved company. So he would be very pleased with everyone who came here to visit with us. My dad liked nothing more than to visit. And then to end, two things about how my dad loves company. Whenever I came back, so now I live in often, but when I do visit, the first thing out of my dad's mouth is, "Can I get you a drink?" when I walk in the house. So it was a little weird last night when no one said that, and then I had to give my sister-in-law a hard time for not saying that. And whenever I left, my dad would always say, "Just stay one more night. I'll buy you a plane ticket. You can take the 3 a.m. flight. Just stay one more night. You don't even have to go to sleep. Just have another drink. Stay one more night." Of course, I rarely would do that, mostly because I value sleep and do other things. But I think that just shows what you all already know, that my dad was a very friendly person. He loved to visit, and that's my dad. So now, for the next reading or whatever, I think Brian is coming up here.
Thank you, Daniel. That was awesome. For all my friends that haven't met my brother or my brothers, they don't live here. But as you can see, Daniel is an incredibly funny person. That was fantastic, seriously. My family is a lot like my dad. They're not the most emotional people in the world. And I think if you believe in God, that God played a trick on me, because I think he took all the emotion from them and gave it to me. And so I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I'm going to try my best. And before I talk about my dad, I'd be amiss to not talk about some other losses that have been near and dear to my father and at least our family. My dad's best friend was his cousin Herb, who passed away. Herb passed away last year. My dad's grandson, yes, his grandson passed away about 30 days ago. It is a dog, but it was my dog. His name was Silvio, and Silvio, by every stretch of the imagination, was my son, and he was my father, my parents' grandson. My parents treated my dog with the same amount of love and the same amount of care and the same amount of kindness that they treated their own beautiful grandchildren that are here today. So yeah, Silvio left us October 29th, and my dad would pretend that he didn't love my dog, his grandson, but he did. When I would go out of town, my parents would watch Silvio. And every time my dad would send a text, "Oh God, the monster's coming to stay with us." And a funny thing about Silvio is I got him at 6 weeks old. I drove about 6 hours to North Dakota to pick him up. And I named him Silvio because of a character in The Sopranos. anyone who's familiar with The Sopranos, there's a character in there played by Steve Van Sant, who's the lead guitar player in the Bruce Springsteen E Street Band. And Silvio in The Sopranos was called Sil. That was his nickname. And the character Sil was notorious for one thing mainly, is that he's the one that pretty much killed everybody. So that's who I named my dog after. And he's an English Staffordshire Bull Terrier. He looks like a miniature pit bull. He's not a pit bull. He's 40 pounds of muscle, but he looks like a smaller version of a pit bull. And my plan was to name him Silvio and then call him Sil, like the character in The Sopranos that killed everybody, because I wanted my dog to be this badass dog. But he was not a badass dog. He was an incredibly loving, affectionate dog, and so never even made it to Sil. Silvio stuck. He was definitely a Silvio. He was not a Sil. But again, he was part of the family. And my dad did love Silvio dearly, so much so that I would have to lecture him about giving him food. So I'll start with that. So no one else probably has a drink, but at least in your prayer and thoughts, think about Silvio for a minute, because we lost him. That is not for comedic relief, by the way. There'll be more of that here soon. I had an idea of putting one of these on everyone's chair, but I'm not sure the funeral home would be okay with that. We also lost Cousin Herb. And Cousin Herb was, like I said, my dad's best friend. And not only was my dad's best friend, he was a very good friend of mine also. And there's going to be a Sopranos thread here. Herbie was a big Italian guy. He literally looked like he was out of central casting from The Sopranos. So much so that when I'd hang out with my dad and Herb and I'd introduce Herb, and everyone knew I was a criminal defense lawyer, I would say, this is Herb, this is the Italian side of the family. This is the guy that tracks down the people and gets my money. And he loved it. He absolutely loved it. He loved it so much, one time for Christmas, he gave me a Louisville Slugger bat. And said, this is what I use to go collect your money. The funny thing about Herb, though, is he was anything but that type of person. Anyone who met Herb, he was one of the sweetest, kindest souls you could ever meet. And he became such a big part of our family. He was divorced, he lived alone, his daughters had moved away. He was my dad's best friend, so pretty much included him in every single thing. Every holiday, he was over. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every Easter, every Father's Day, because his kids weren't here. Spent a lot of time with Herb, and like I said, they were best friends. And when Herb walked in the door for whatever holiday, and no offense to my other relatives here, I'm sorry, he was my favorite. And I think he was my mom's favorite too. Again, my apologies. But when he walked in the door, he was the one person that I would get up no matter what I was doing. I don't care if I was cooking. I don't care if I was, sitting on the sofa watching TV. Whatever was going on, I would get up. I'd go give him a big hug, and I'd get him a drink. And I didn't do that for, again, my apologies. I didn't do that for anybody else. I really didn't. But Herb passed away at the beginning of COVID, at the beginning of the communist lockdown, and so we couldn't do anything. There were no funerals, there was nothing. And so I just thought my dad would want me to honor him here. So Silvio is a little bit more for me. Herb's for both of us and everyone here. So again, take a moment and I don't know if you pray, you pray. I'm not a religious fellow, but pray. Keep them in your thoughts. This is to Herb. I would like to also honor my dad's cat, Susie. Unfortunately, I didn't know much about Susie. The only thing I know about Susie is my dad really loved his, sorry, Mom, he really loved this fucking cat. He really did, and I hate cats. Anyone who knows me knows I don't like cats. I love animals, but I really don't like cats. I'm highly allergic to cats. My grandmother gave me a cat for my 4th birthday. And I loved animals. I love that cat. I spent so much time with that cat. I was so sick all the time. This is 1977. No one knew what asthma was. They didn't know what all these allergies were. I can't breathe. My face is breaking out. I'm scratching my eyes out. So unfortunately, Susie and I never got that close. We really never got to know each other. But my dad loved that cat, and Susie died earlier this year. So there's just been a lot of loss in our family, a lot of loss. So I'm not even going to take a drink to Susie, but you can hold Susie in your prayers, or think and reflect on my dad's love for his cat, because he sure did love that cat. And in all fairness, I gave him a hard time about it. Because I don't like cats. And I almost feel I was somewhat insensitive when his cat died. And I didn't do anything bad or rude. I just didn't have the overwhelming emotion that I have and have had, and all of us have when you lose a family member or your own pet. I just didn't have that for him, sadly, until my dog died. I mean, when Silvio died, I realized it's not just the pet, it's the fact that my father had something that he could take care of every single day. That was the loss. He took care of 4 boys. Raised 4 great sons. And this job was done for 30 plus years, and so I don't think I appreciated the fact that he had that cat to take care of, and how much it meant to him to have something to take care of, to wake up in the morning, to feed, to look for, something that gives him affection, that he gives affection back to. So, why not? This is to Susie. Like I said, I'm not a religious fella. I don't know what happens to anybody when they die. It's not my thing, and I don't judge anyone for whatever their beliefs are. But I hope, if there's a heaven, that my dad and Herb right now are sitting down, eating some pasta. I hope when they're done, they let my dog lick the bowl. And I can only imagine right now my dad's, actually Herb too, they're probably complaining that the food's not good enough. They wish they could get my pasta. My dad's probably been put in a timeout right now by God because he's been bitching all day about the stock market today. My dad traded his own money pretty much his entire life. I remember as a child, he would literally, when we had VCRs, he would put the videotapes in and record CNBC. He would record the stock market, come home from work, and literally watch CNBC in the evening. You can't make it up. My dad retired at 60, and I absolutely bet that he made more money trading his money in retirement than he did in almost 40 years of being an engineer. He was a very, very smart guy, and nobody knew it. Anyway, okay. So, I have a friend who would often joke after he went to a funeral. This person's name will remain anonymous. But he would joke after some of these funerals because, every time somebody dies, we have these events, and all these people get up here and talk about the deceased, right? And they all say what a good guy this person was. What a good guy. What a good guy. And my friend would laugh, and he'd be like, this person, again, Mom, sorry, this person's a total asshole, and everyone knows it. This is not a good guy. Why does everyone say this person's a good? This is not a good guy. And I would agree with them. We'd laugh about it together, even though it was his little anecdote. I concurred with them 100%. My dad actually was a good guy. My mom and I sat down. By the way, I'm just pretending to read stuff. I don't. So, because if I keep looking up and see my friends' faces, I'm going to start crying. So I'm not reading anything, actually. I've got some poetry for my mother later, but I'll get to that in a minute. But my dad was a good guy. And my mom and I sat down with Napoleon. By the way, thank you so much. Napoleon is a dear friend of mine, and the fact that he did this means a lot to me. I've been to enough of these things where you've got some stiff up here that doesn't know anybody, and they say a bunch of stupid shit. And you're just like, what is going on here? Who is this clown in this bad suit, and what is going on? So I really wanted to have somebody that, I know and has at least the ability to speak and be sincere. So we sat down with Napoleon last week, and Napoleon said, to my mom and I need a list of questions because he wanted to prepare for this. In one word, how would you describe Jim? In one word, how would you describe Jim? Of course, I said, alcohol. And Napoleon laughs. My mom's about to hit me. Oh. Napoleon, no, seriously, one word. My mom's thinking about it, and I said, drinking. Napoleon laughs, I laugh. My mom's about to hit me again. Then we get serious. Napoleon goes, no, seriously. And I said, wine, box wine? Eventually, my mom says, he is just a good guy. And he was. He really was. My dad was just a really good, decent man, well, I don't know. Trying to describe my father. It's lucky to have a father who's honest. He was authentic. Never judged anybody. He treated everybody fairly all times. Never talked about himself, ever. Never boasted. Never took himself too seriously. He's a really, really funny guy. And he's very generous. And people think of generosity, they always think of, giving something financial. But generosity is obviously much, much deeper than that. As my brother mentioned, or Napoleon might have mentioned it, I'm sorry. He was frugal. I mean, when I was young, we would just call him cheap. He was extremely cheap, It wasn't Goodwill, Napoleon, it was Savers. Probably the same difference. But he didn't care. My dad had zero pretension, zero superficialness, nothing. How he raised a child like me, who's a very fancy person, I have no idea, but my dad did not care at all. I mean, zero. It meant nothing to him. He didn't care how much someone made, what their job title was, how many friends they had, how important they were. It was absolutely meaningless to him. I never heard him complain about anybody or anything ever other than his own family, but that's different. It's different. We all complain about our family members. It's different, but never anybody else. And his generosity, more than anything, was his time and his presence. I'm 48 years old, and I'm telling you, there was never a time in my entire life my dad wasn't there, ever. And I mean, ever. Unless he was away at work or something, or had a work obligation, he's overseas at work as a spy. And Daniel wasn't just your friends, it was all of our friends, including us as well. We all thought he was a spy. In the Chevy Chase type of spyness, because my dad had a certain goofy aloofness to him that you're almost like, is this all a charade? Like, is this whole thing an act? Because he would disappear for long stretches of time in countries like Russia and China and Indonesia and Peru and Chile and Prague and Russia. It's like, who is this person? And he comes back and, he's driving shitty cars and dressed poorly, and we're all basically living in poverty. It's like, what is happening here? Bizarro world, right? He treated himself to a new car finally this past year because he made a lot of money in the stock market. He's made a lot of money in a long time, but this last year especially. So he went out and got a 10-plus-year-old car with 150,000 miles on it. That to him is what you call a new car. As a child, I could probably speak for my brothers as well. I was not a fan of this frugalness. As an adult and getting older, I started to understand it differently. My dad's frugalness was a virtue to him, but he just never talked about himself, and he never tried to like make others or make his children like him. Like, you should do this because I do this. He wasn't like that. He just went about his business and he did it. But he took great pride in being frugal. It didn't mean a lot to him. But his generosity with time, anyone needed anything, he was always there. I just don't ever remember ever calling my dad and saying, hey, do you want to meet for a drink? Or you want to go to this game? Or what are you doing right now? Or I might stop by the house. I don't ever remember one time my father ever saying, I'm sorry, Brian, I'm busy. Ever. That's pretty insane. Ever. Even if he's doing something, he would figure out a way to finish up what he's doing and try to figure out a time to meet up with me every single time. If I stopped by the house and he wasn't there, I'd walk in like, Mom, where's Dad? He's over doing such and such. I'd text message him and say, Dad, I just stopped at the house. He'd be home within 30 minutes. I am going to read a poem. Now that I feel like I can actually read this without crying, that I wrote. My mom loves poetry, so I wrote a poem. I'm kidding, I didn't write it. We'll call it a fusion, right? I kind of, I took it, I added some stuff, I cut and pasted a few things. It's not really mine, but let's just pretend I wrote it. Because this is so apropos. My father never looked for praise. He was never one to boast. He just went on quietly working for those he loved the most. His dreams were seldom spoken. His wants were very few. And most of the time, his worries would go unspoken too. He was always there, and I mean he was always there. A firm foundation. Through all the storms in my life, he was a sturdy presence to hold on to in times of stress and strife. He was a true friend I could turn to when times were good or bad. One of the greatest blessings in my life was the man I called Dad. Just pretend I wrote it, Mom, okay? I wrote. There's a few other things I want to cover. I did make notes for some of this stuff. Sum up my dad. The best way I could sum up my dad, because we spent a lot of time together, and I didn't just lose my father. I lost one of my best friends. I have a lot of friends here today. Some are here for me and haven't met my dad, but most of them have met my father because my father was such a big part of my life. I gave him a nickname years ago that stuck, Jimmy Cocktail. Everything we did, I mean, I took him to Wolves games, Wild games, Vikings games, Twins games. Everyone knew him. And everyone knew him as Jimmy Cocktail. And the number of times my friends would say, how's Jimmy Cocktail doing? Or is Jimmy Cocktail coming today? Or, you know, it's but if I could really sum them up, because we spend a lot of time together and we get drinks together and we hang out together, is every time I went to a bar that he frequented, and he had a couple of his neighborhood spots, and every time, and I mean every single time, I'd walk in, and my dad, he dressed sometimes like he looks like he's a homeless person, and I would come in my fancy suits, and every single time a stranger would come up to me, every single time. And they would introduce themselves. They'd shake my hand, and they would tell me two things I would always hear. One is, I'm so happy to meet you. And they would talk to me as if they knew me, like they knew all this stuff about me. And they would tell me how proud my father was of me and his other kids, and how he talked about his children all the time. This happened a lot. About how proud he was of us. And it was mutual, because sorry, Mom, I know she doesn't like this, but I need a little drag here. And believe me, this is not a prop. It was mutual, because it made me so proud of my dad. And to meet strangers that would treat me so well and felt like they knew so much about me, and I'd never met them before. It was strange. Like, you could just imagine the hours he spent bragging about his children to these people that I've never met. And the other thing that would happen, and there's probably a few people here, is that I would have, whether they were strangers or even people I've met a few times before, but it could be a bartender, it could be a stranger, but every single time, always, when my dad goes to the bathroom or he goes over to talk to somebody, they would always say something to me, and they'd always make sure I knew. They're like, your dad's a good guy. Your dad's a good person. It happened a lot. And switching it around, I brought him to a lot of places. And it could be a fancy restaurant like St. Paul Grill. It could be a hole in the wall that I hang out at. It could be Tiffany's, where the Celebration of Life is going to be at. All the time people would ask me, how's your dad? How's your dad doing? Even if they met him one time 3 years ago. How's your dad doing? People that I knew, always asking how my dad's doing, because he made an impression on everyone. I don't want this to be too long, so I'm going to try to wind this up. Just a few things to try to explain a little bit more about my father. My dad would sit on his little porch in front of his house, and it was small. I mean, he could barely fit 2 chairs there, and he'd sit out there with the neighbor and drink and listen to Twins games on our radio. He's got a friend, Rodney, here. Rodney's here somewhere. Lives in the neighborhood. Rodney's a tree trimmer. Rodney comes over and trims my trees at my house. My dad, even in his 70s, Rodney would be trimming the trees. My dad in his 70s has got the chainsaw out, chopping up all the wood, all of it. I didn't do a thing. I'd have a beer and just watch them and laugh and tell them to hurry up. In his 70s, just chains piling up all the wood, and they take it all out of there. It was something else. I know Cindy's here too somewhere. She's a good friend of my dad's. The stuff that, I mean, she can tell you in a private conversation a number of things he did for her. The stuff that my dad did for neighbors and friends and people in his life is, and never talked about it. No one would ever really know. I was helping Cindy out with something, and she couldn't print something out, didn't have the ability to scan it. My dad's ready to drive all the way to my house, get a document, drive all the way to her house. I mean, it was... Anyway. Napoleon brought up you don't teach basketball, you coach, Napoleon. I know you wouldn't know that. I highly suspect if you watch Napoleon play basketball, it might look like my dad trying to play basketball. No, I actually taught my dad how to coach basketball. But that was my dad. I love sports. My brothers played sports. I played basketball, and we didn't have a coach. I can't remember if the coach quit or we just didn't have one. I'm like, Dad, come on, it's not that hard. I'll tell you how to do it. Seriously. And he right away steps up and coaches. And he did similar things for my brothers too. There's almost nothing you could ask him where he would say no. I mean, he'd grumble a lot. You know, he would grumble a lot. Probably need a few of his boxed wine glasses, and then he's fine. Anyway, he raised 4 sons. I mean, they talk about these eulogies. I look at the computer, I'm looking at all this stuff. I'm like, I'm not doing that. This sounds terrible. But one of them is talk about the accomplishments. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make it really short. It's an accomplishment to support and take care of a family of 6 and raise 4 children. That is an unbelievable accomplishment, let alone all the other stuff I'm talking about. And one of our brothers passed away in 1995. We're not going to get into that, sad enough already, but he raised 4 very intelligent, very good, very decent. My brothers are very decent, kind, good-hearted people that have beautiful children. Very respectful kids. Everyone got a good education. Not all well-mannered. 3 of the 4 were well-mannered, polite. One of them's still a work in progress on that note. Anyway, I'll finish up here. I'm going to read something. I don't know if you call it a poem, a saying, whatever it was, but I was Googling stuff and I came across this, and it just seemed fitting to end this way. It's from, I'm going to say it wrong, my brother already corrected me, Tecumseh? Tecumseh. From Chief Tecumseh, crouching tiger of the Shawnee Nation. This guy lived from 1768 to 81. I mean, no, that's not right. All right, scratch that. I don't know what that number means. Just know this is a long time ago. Can't even say the word Indian anymore, so it was a long, long time ago. But I'm going to leave you with this. My buddy Grigsby here will appreciate this. He probably knows everything there is to know about this guy called Tecumseh. So live your life that the fear of death can never enter your heart. Trouble no one about their religion. Respect others in their view and demand that they respect yours. Love your life, perfect your life, beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people or family. Prepare a noble death song for the day when you go over the great divide. Always give a word or a sign of salute when meeting or passing a friend, even a stranger, when in a lonely place. Show respect to all people and grovel to none. When you rise in the morning, give thanks for the food and for the joy of living. If you see no reason for giving thanks, the fault lies only in yourself. Abuse no one and no thing, for abuse turns the wise ones to fools and robs the spirit of its vision. When it comes your time to die, be not like those whose hearts are filled with the fear of death, so that when their time comes, they weep and pray for a little more time to live their lives over again in a different way. Rather, sing your death song and die like a hero going home. To my dad, we'll miss him. I did need that. That, again, not a prop.
Okay. Come on. No? Okay.
We only needed one Chris up here.
I'm going to read this poem as the ending. It's a poem I found. It's not the end of the trail for me. I've just traveled on, you see. Oh, boy, I'm not going to do this. Up ahead where greener pastures grow and cool water streams. I can't do it. Oh, Calvin, you got to help me.
You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Or you could, yeah, read it.
Flowers bloom of every sort and kind. Colors more vivid than any I left behind. Family and friends I haven't seen in years. Hugs and handshakes and no more tears. They've welcomed me home here today, a place of peace for me to stay. They say it's my home for eternity. No, it's not the end of the trail for me.
Guys, thanks.
Those are beautiful words. You know, and it forced me to reflect as I was listening to all of you speak on an old spiritual proverb that says, don't just look for the blessing, but be the blessing. And as the last journey of what I like to call a fateful pilgrim took him beyond the sunset, and as the heavens morning broke, I like to think in the words of Barrion at this time, that all the trumpets sounded on the other side, welcoming Jim. Jim, we thank you for being a blessing to us all. We thank you for being a beacon of hope and a guiding light. And today, as we transition from this tribute to Jim into a celebration of his fantastic life, I invite all of you to greet Brian and greet Sharon and the rest of the family and remember the times where Jim was that blessing to you. So that celebration of life, just reminder, takes place at Tiffany's right after this formal ceremony. Thank you.
One last thing, hold on. No, I'm not going to take out the mega hat. Don't worry about it. We'll save that for Tiffany's. There's an open bar at Tiffany's, so maybe a few more people will come when you hear that. It's the only thing my father wanted. Okay, he had talked about his death quite a bit in the past year. It's like he knew this was going to come. In fact, he signed his will and all of his papers weeks before he passed away. And my friends, Don Anderson, Reed Anderson, Eric Anderson, money managers, and one's a lawyer, did the estate trust stuff. He signed it and said, well, now that that's settled, I can go join cousin Herb and Eddie. So I think he knew this was coming, but he made it very clear to me that's the thing he cared about most, was having a celebration of life and having people drink, and even if you don't drink, have a soda, but have fun, talk about him, enjoy yourself. I just want to make sure you understand that. This is not, Tiffany's is one of my friends' great restaurants and bars, and my dad and I hung out there a lot. My dad loved it there. It's a great place. There'll be food there also. But this is what he truly wanted. So if you have the time later on today, please come. Please. Thanks.
Must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight on your face. You've been content to let me shine. You always walked a step behind. I was the one with all the glory, while
People
you
in the
were
other room,
the
you can start
one
exiting.
with all the strength. Only a face without a name. I never once heard you complain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I'd like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. It might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I've got it all here in my heart. I want you to know I know the truth. I would be nothing